Last time on Donkey Kong Country 3, we took damage and entered a bonus barrel, so now we're actually going to show that bonus stage. So, yep, we're gonna, keep in mind, something I didn't realize about these bonus stages was you only have to complete them once to get the coins. So if you die in the stage that you get the bonus stage and you don't have to do it again. But later in this episode, or in part 4, you're going to see a part where I, go to a bonus stage twice. But yeah, so welcome to part 3 of Donkey Kong Country 3. We got a new record, and when we talked to I didn't talk to the bear after beating this world, but that's actually something that unlocks something. You're supposed to talk to the bear and confirm to him that you beat his world record. So that's kind of the situation there. But yeah, I also, later in this episode, I'm going to showcase the fact that my save file got deleted. Now, luckily it was not the save file for this file that I'm playing, but the other two that were on the cartridge when I bought this game were deleted. And that's kind of something that's starting to piss me off about Super Nintendo games. That's kind of another reason why I cancel projects sometimes. Like for folks who've seen the 7 episodes of my Super Metroid playthrough from back in 2020, the whole thing about that was I was trying to get a setup with the Super Nintendo at another house. So I unplugged the Super Nintendo, and for some reason I have bad luck with Super Nintendos that anytime I unplug a Super Nintendo from the plug in the wall, the save file on the cartridge gets deleted. And I don't know why that is. There's just something about it that it just magically decides that, okay, you move the Super Nintendo to another room, you therefore lose, like, your save files, even if they're, like, 5 or 8 years old or something. It's incredibly rude, but it happens. I mean, I understand that these games are from, like, 1994 and 1997, but still, I mean, you would think that, if they're not being played, it'd be different if these games were on for, like, 25 years, but if I'm playing them like once every 3 years, or a couple of days a couple times a week every 3 years, it's just not, but that's this kind of thing. Like I said, these games are from the mid-90s, but so that's what happened to my Super Metroid playthrough from back in the day. And I just never got the gumption to, I was decently far in Super Metroid to the point where I said, if this would have happened at any further in the game, I definitely wouldn't have done it. But I had like skits lined up. Cobalt was going to help me with some of the skits in that game. And I wound up just kind of saying, fuck it, just due to the fact of like, just the sheer sabotage because I tried playing the Super Nintendo at a different house. And really, I'm lucky that that didn't happen to other Super Nintendo games that I had. That's why it's really difficult, because I think Nintendo at this stage just wants you to convert to getting a Nintendo Switch and just playing the games. But there's nothing, I hate to say it, but there's nothing like playing a Super Nintendo game on a Super Nintendo, because the controller is just a classic. That's just the whole thing about it. I never could see myself playing a Super Nintendo game on a Wii or a Wii U controller. It's a fancy feat to be able to think about doing that, but the real concept behind it is, of course, is just that it's just not conducive. And especially, I don't know how someone would play Street Fighter 2 on a Wii U controller. That's got to be very difficult. Those type games. Maybe a game like Earthbound, which I actually did purchase on the Wii U. Earthbound, or Final Fantasy like 2 or Final Fantasy 4, Secret of Mana possibly, but really even a game like Super Mario World just seems like a nightmare to play on a Wii U controller. That's just kind of the thing. And I don't know how much better the Nintendo Switch controller is either. They just need to, full-blown let emulation kind of happen, but even then, I don't feel like an emulation controller would really work that much either, unless you have a replica of a Super Nintendo controller or something. So, Nintendo needs to fix this problem. Really the concept behind like playing retro games from anything past like about 2001 or so is just starting to get more and more difficult, which I really think is like the thing. But there's just plenty of situations here. So I've got some videos planned to do with Reggie, so I'm just kind of getting a quick video done because I'm going to hang out with Reggie, get some more stuff done there, and probably get some Domino's. And by Domino's, I mean, you would think, oh, you're going to get pizza, but no, I'm actually going to get a sandwich. Domino's makes some mean sandwiches. That's definitely something. I like when brands spread out like that. I mean, that's definitely not something pizzerias would have thought of back in like the 90s or the 80s. Like, hey, we can give you this pizza, or we can branch out and do some extra stuff. That's kind of how I see Acidic Roots and like the Acid Roots brand in a lot of ways. It's just being multifaceted with it. Because, apart from me doing comedy sketches and that type of stuff, I also do video games, and sometimes I've done food reviews and that type of stuff. So there's just a number of like situations. It's fun overall to do. I definitely think that that's like the main kind of tangent for so many circumstances. But yeah, it's been kind of light on traffic. There just has not been a lot going on. It's been pretty plain Jane in terms of like YouTube content. I'm really looking for like something kind of rescue the day, but it just seems to be becoming more of a decrease. I don't know, everyone's just kind of filled out. I mean, I understand for people who've been doing YouTube since like 2012 and 2010 or further back, but the more I look after it, the more it's just kind of, I don't know, I mean, people are heading for the hills, and it's like, I just don't believe in retirement when you're underneath like the age of 30 or something. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, even if you've been doing it since like 13, 14, and then you're 28, 29, you decide to go somewhere else, I mean, that's one thing. But for the most part, it just feels kind of awkward. It's too many people that just want to sunbathe all day. It's really like the concept behind it is just to kind of say like that, I just want to soak up the sun and not have to do much and be near an ocean. But I don't know, I mean, even myself with this YouTube channel, it gets kind of tricky just because I look after it, and I have to say, like, I'm really running out of video games that I can do. Like, I just bought Uniracers, and that's what I was talking about when I lost my save file, as you'll see here. If you saw some of the earlier episodes of this project, I had 2 other save files, but luckily my save file didn't get deleted. I'm really happy for that. I probably could have gotten back to World 2, but I'm not going to say that it wouldn't have pissed me off. Which basically means that I have to keep Donkey Kong Country 3 in the Super Nintendo until I beat the game. Which that's why I actually own 2 Super Nintendos because of this problem. Because I'm playing a role-playing game, as you know, with Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, and that game would be a nightmare to get 90% done with the game just for the save file to erase. I mean, that would instantly make me want to cancel the game. There's no way I'm going to go through all the nooks and crannies of the 4 crystal dungeons and all the boss characters in the in-between and the random battles. Basically a whopping 30 or 40 hours of gameplay just to get back to the end of the game, just for it to get deleted again. That I went to the trouble. I own 2 Super Nintendos, so anytime I do a role-playing game, the Super Nintendo cartridge can just stay in the machine until I eventually beat the game. But now that, I just, for the Super Nintendo that's playing this game, Donkey Kong Country 3, all I did was just exchange cartridges and pop in Uniracers, and it, the Super Nintendo decided to delete 2 out of 3 of my save files, which is kind of absurd. But whatever. So I don't know. I mean, the thing about Uniracers, I don't really know. It's just the fact that, I mean, from what I tried playing with it, it doesn't look like I can beat the game. I would at least like to do a let's mess around just to kind of, jaunt around in the damn game. But I'm just not very well aware if it would be worth it to risk this game's save file, because I'm not going to buy a 3rd Super Nintendo just so I can play 3 games at once. I mean, it's just kind of, as the only other option is just to go out and spend the cold hard cash on a 3rd Super Nintendo so I can play a game that I can't even beat, that I'm just trying to do a couple of mess around projects on, or episodes on. I mean, I feel like it's noteworthy. I think the game is at least enough of a noteworthy rental to have a few spare videos on this channel, but I can't confirm that I would be able to complete Uniracers, because just the first race I lost in, there's not 3 or 4 or 5 racers. If you don't get first, you lose. That's just how the game treats it. And just automatically, I was losing. I was just like, "What the fuck is this nonsense?" It's right off the bat. It was not even shy about the fact that the first race in the game you lost that quickly. So, but yeah. So, but this game is kind of pissing me off. I mean, it's not angering me, but it's making me kind of grumble a bit. Is because the mechanics in this game are so much slower, because I feel like this game was designed for more of the younger set than the first 2 games in this series were. Like, Donkey Kong Country 2 had more tight mechanics. Like, when you play, like, the parrot character, the motions that the parrot has is just, like, a lot more slow and cumbersome. It just doesn't quite feel as airtight and as crisp as it did in the first. I don't know if you played as the parrot in Donkey Kong Country 1. I don't think you did, but in the second one, the mechanics were just so much better. And it's just kind of sluggish. And this whole game, I just don't really like the hitbox ratio and that type stuff. I just feel like it's a lot more cumbersome and kind of gummy. And Donkey Kong Country 2, I think that's another partial reason as to why the second game was seen as better than this one. It really has kind of cumbersome mechanics. But I mean, if you're like 8 years old or 10 years old, you might not notice it as much. But if you played all 3 games, this is the most kind of loose and more gummy, and this overall kind of, I can't think of too many other words to describe the mechanics of it. It's just more soft, you know. It just doesn't have the tightness to it. So that's kind of thing. And plus the enemies move slower. Like those bees, they hit me every single time when they move in like straight lines, just because they take longer to move across the screen. And in the first 2 games, when they did those sorts of mechanics, they moved quickly. But the problem with it is they move so slow that you have to wait like at least an extra second, 2 or 3 seconds for them to move out of your hitbox so you can jump over them. And that concept, that really pisses me off that they do that in this game. Because like I said, the mechanics in this game are really slow. So it leads to a lot more hits because you have to slow down kind of your reflex nature. I mean, for a platform game, things are supposed to be quick. And when you got these enemies that are moving slow as molasses, it's kind of stupid just because it just doesn't make sense for that. It really, I mean, like I said, this game was designed for the younger set, so it kind of slows it down because it thinks that kids would have a more difficult time jumping over those. But in reality, for fans of like the earlier 2 games in the series, it does the opposite. These bees are just a lot harder to jump over, and especially when you have the elephant character, that makes it even worse. The elephant's mechanics are worse than the monkey's mechanics. So, but get used to this elephant because you use her a lot. I want to say the elephant's name is Ellie, but you use this character quite a bit. At least 4, 5, or 6 stages in the game you're going to be using this character. So this is probably the animal buddy that's used the most, but I just feel like it's not so much that it's a problem, it's just the fact that the mechanics based upon the controls, this is not, I mean, elephants jumping just doesn't make sense in the first place, but the jumping mechanics, I felt like the Rhino's mechanics from the first 2 games were just better. He was a better jumper than this character. It just doesn't really make sense. I feel like there's a lot of ratios about it that you're going to get hit because you think that you can jump over something that you really can't. So it's just odd. It's just not intended. I don't feel like the animal buddies are intended for platforming. But yeah, so I've just been kind of mishmashing. So just pay attention. You know, you have to use the trunk of the elephant to get water to squirt some of these enemies, and that's just by pressing the L and the R button. But I mean, really, there's a lot of gimmick stages. Like, I would have preferred this forest stage to have just been with the monkeys, the Kongs, but it didn't. This is what the mantra of this game is kind of more of like gimmicky type stuff. And it's fine to do that. I mean, they went for something clever, but I think a lot of folks would have just preferred a standard regular platforming. So, but alright folks, that wraps up part 3. I've just been kind of rambling for most of this episode. Number of things I've had to talk about surprisingly, but that's kind of the concept there. So subscribe for more fun. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in part 4.